Unlock the full potential with your business with Leadershipity. Our proven strategies have fueled growth for countless organizations. Ready to elevate your leadership and scale your success? Book your free 15-minute consultation now. Click the link in the show notes below and let's make your business soar.
Welcome to NIL for You. I'm Rob Finkelstein. I'm the founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we created a platform for athletes to network and connect with their fellow alumni and tap into various resources and education and career areas, mental health, financial. But I'm so excited about doing this show each week. We have great guests on. We talk about different stories in NIL. We have talk about different topics on guests. We had one earlier where we talked with a former Division III athlete who's had a lot of success in the space. But more importantly, love doing the show with my co-host, Trent Clark. How you doing, Trent?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have the show today. I am Trent Clark, the CEO of Leadershipity, Athletic Influencer Marketing, and I am a longtime coach in professional baseball, coaching in 3 World Series and speak all over the world, and just came out with a book, Leading Winning Teams, that'll release in August. So super excited about that with Wiley Business. And but I'm more excited about my man, Darren Heitner, and Heitner Legal being represented on NIL for You today. Darren, how are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. You are in the hotbed of NIL. And for those that don't know, Darren is a U Florida grad. He's a Gatorville, man. And now he's just switched to the other side. He's an adjunct professor down at Miami. I don't even know how, he's got to hide his Florida Gator tattoo so he can go over there and teach, which is awesome. And he's teaching NIL education to the law school, which is, by the way, one of the most prestigious law schools in the country, by the way, if people don't know. And why wouldn't you want to go to law school at Miami, right? So, Darren, tell us a little bit about how that's going and how you stumbled into that hot mess.
It's good. I have to duck my head sometimes and stay away from social media because I'll get the Gators fans, attacking me because I'm there in Coral Gables teaching a course. And interestingly, I also have taught for many years a sports law course at my alma mater. So it's not like I've made the switch completely. My allegiance is absolutely still in Gainesville, Florida, with the University of Florida. But it came about a couple of years ago, and it's an abbreviated, compressed course that I teach for a week, every single day, including the weekend, every spring at Miami. And the discussion has changed over those 2 years tremendously. And I'm sure next year, when I hopefully go back and teach again, likewise. And it came about, there's an amazing assistant dean there named Greg Levy, who I've known for a very long time. And since he became the assistant dean, he has focused so much on growing the sports entertainment division of that law school. And outside of my own course, they're just highly nuanced, specialized courses in sports entertainment that has made Miami really go. And I'm not speaking on behalf of Miami here or trying to really promote it, but objectively speaking, it's made Miami go from a school that people wanted to go to because of its location and it's in the temperature and the nightlife to if you want to get into sports entertainment, it's got to be near the top of the list just based on the course descriptions and the amazing adjuncts that come down to speak.
We're going to get into the syllabus in just a minute, by the way, because that's going to be good. But and I think you bring a great point. They've hired this brilliant lawyer. Heitner Legal is just this law firm. He's worked with tons of different groups in athletics, in sports, sporting goods. He's been representing Gatorade for the last 5 years in some of their legal work. And there's all sorts of athletes that are living in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. I mean, there is a ton that have settled in the area too. So this is just a sporting just mecca. So, hey, if I'm going to go in and I want to be in sports legal, why wouldn't you want to go to a University of Miami? This is it's a pretty hot spot that checks off a lot of boxes, Darren. So I had just recently made an appearance at a small university that did a very similar 1 week, a gap credit in their marketing department in their business school. And I went in for 2 half days, and it was one of those, hey, get your credit. They got to go for 1 or 2 weeks over the winter break. and just had a ball with the kids talking NIL, of which I was shocked at. As you know, Darren, outside of athletics, everyone thinks it's something else than it really is. I mean, they thought all. I mean, I had stories coming out of my ears of what they thought it might be and what it actually really is. What have you found working with these students?
Well, I love getting back into that academic sphere. It's hard to believe that I'm coming up on 15 years since I graduated law school. So when I do those 1 week courses, whether it be on my alma mater or at University of Miami, it's very stressful preparing for it. And during that week, it's not as though my normal load of work for my clients stops or that potential new clients stop calling. So it's a lot to manage. But at the same time, it's so amazing to go back into that environment and have conversations where we're testing each other's knowledge and trying to think outside of the box and like where we've been, where we are, where we're going. And that's particularly true in the space of NIL, where rights of publicity for individuals to exploit their commercial rights related to their names, images, and likenesses has existed for many decades. But college athletes in particular have only been able to enjoy these rights now for 3 years. And high school athletes can't even enjoy those rights in every single state. It's varying and it's changed with time. And even those rights for college athletes are changing almost on a daily basis. So it makes it very exciting and it makes the conversation very interesting, invigorating, and I like it overall. I mean, I could tell you again, if you ask me during the course, I'd say I'm overwhelmed. If you ask me a day after the course ends, I'm begging for some more.
Invigorated. Yeah, I love that. And it's funny, man. You talking about 15 years out of law school. You look like you just got done with your undergrad, showing off some guns today. I mean, come on, bro. Like I just thought you just left the campus rec center
Uh,
where you were, checking out some cute girls and getting the gun show on. So,
Thank you.
um, so I love the fact that what you mentioned is so good about um, new stimulus, right? And I really appreciate that in our NIL education company, having started that in 2022, right at the beginning of the year, about 6 months into the legal, you develop this entrepreneurial. Hey, this is an entrepreneurial venture in NIL. Like, start your own LLC. This is a way to make money, and we're educating these kids on that. And I'm watching the whole thing is an adaptive process. So it's just constant, continuous learning, which is so intriguing. And then now, as you talk about those states, when I started, 13 states were legal at the high school level. Now I think it's 34 to 36, somewhere in that range. So, there's been a massive shift in the culture of where can this NIL money and marketing go. So, do you think it's going to just continue to go fast like that for a long time, or do you think we're going to get something settled in and start landing in some more consistent process over the next 2-3 years?
It's hard to predict the future, and so if asked whether there's going to be some consistency or more irregularity, I would go for the latter. I think what you have currently is likely to stay for some time, which is a system where the NCAA, states, and the federal government are very much hands off. Where that could change is if an NCAA proposal finally gets pushed through, which is likely still months away, where either the school, and this is the easier path forward, a school can be more involved in the procurement and negotiating of contracts between third parties and athletes. So they're not directly paying the athletes. Or another suggestion, which goes a bit further and I think opens more of a Pandora's box potentially for the NCAA, is if schools can now directly pay athletes in exchange for certain NIL rights. Those are two different proposals that have been put up for discussion by current President Charlie Baker. At the same time, you've had recently courts of law strike down restrictions on the transfer portal and strike down restrictions on what are considered to be inducements to cause athletes to commit to or enroll at universities. And whether or not the NCAA outright allows schools to be involved in the process of third parties negotiating, the reality is that's already happened, right? So coaches are actually already getting involved in those conversations and they are part of the universities. Where we really don't know is, will Congress step in at some point? And I would lean towards that being no. And I recently had the unique opportunity to go to Capitol Hill and sit in a roundtable discussion that was hosted by Senator Ted Cruz with Coach Nick Saban, Greg Byrne, who's the athletic director at Alabama, the current commissioner of the ACC, and others. And I thought that there was a lot of progress that could be made, but at the same time, I'm not sure there's bipartisan support or enough intention to push anything forward. And then you go to the judicial system where there's myriad cases pending, including surrounding whether or not athletes need to be considered and construed as employees. If that happens, that throws the whole system on its head. So consistency, I think, we have what we have right now. I don't know what we will have a day from now, 5 days from now, 5 months from
What's your thoughts on, and this has come up in a couple conversations we had, as far as, like Florida, obviously it's not legal yet for high school. Same thing with Texas. So we were talking about this, about all of a sudden athletes maybe starting to jump states because, they want to, like all of a sudden you got Florida athletes going into Georgia. Is that something you see going to change soon? Or like what's some of the holdups that people face with that?
Well, athletes moving states for NIL opportunities is the exception to the rule, and I think will continue to be the exception to the rule. That said, for a five-star athlete or an athlete who has an exorbitant social media profile, massive following, I think it makes perfect sense for that athlete to try to exploit opportunities that may not exist in the future. So we'll see some of that to the extent that states like Florida and Texas remain in a position where they're not allowing high school athletes to engage in these types of activities. Texas is unique because in Texas, it's not even the High School Athletic Association that's specifically barring athletes from engaging in this. It's a state statute, it's a law. And that's very rare. Most states don't have this in place. Florida doesn't have it. It's in Florida. It's the Florida High School Athletic Association that has refused to modify its bylaw. Now, there's workarounds in certain circumstances. I'm shocked by how long it's taken the FHSAA to move on this front. I've heard for a long time that this is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. At the same time, I've heard there's a real split, a real chasm between the athletic directors of certain high schools in the state that are ready and willing to make the shift and others that are very, very powerful, even nationally, that are just very afraid of the unknown and providing so much power to athletes where it's no longer really the coaches calling the shots even. You're giving the athletes so much power that it could cause a lot of disarray in the locker room. Now, this was a fear going back prior to 2021, even in the college arena, and we haven't really seen that play out, at least to a large extent. Coach Saban decided he's had enough at some point where he kind of got that feeling that it was occurring, and maybe it will occur to a greater extent in the future. But we don't read or hear a lot about that type of strife in the locker rooms just yet.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting play. And I think about how many Mr. Basketballs here in Michigan have gone on to pretty sizable careers. And now we've got this freshman, national player of the year and sophomore best. I mean, we're naming the best eighth grader now in the country, right? Like we're just ranking it down. Soon we'll have the best first grader. Oh, you should see this kid dribble, down his shirt and down this court. Like it's getting crazy. But now I could see where, and I could tell I saw this kid play. I saw a freshman of the year play in Detroit, and the kid's pretty special. And now I'm thinking, hey, he's got 3 years to transfer into a Georgia school. And we know now with ESPN, a lot of people know these high level private schools where you can go send a kid in a school, whether it's New Jersey and Oak Hill or one of the schools in Cleveland, big wrestling schools and football schools there. I mean, whatever the case, right? Cincinnati, you got Moeller. All of a sudden, these kids take on, hey, I'll just slide down there and mom and dad, like they're gonna hook me up with like $250,000 a year, and I could see it happening, man.
Well, it's a new world. I mean, look at it from a representation standpoint. So prior to July 1, 2021, athletes couldn't sign with agents until they relinquished their intercollegiate athletic eligibility. They certainly weren't signing with agents when they were in high school. By signing with an agent, they could jeopardize and potentially lose their eligibility to participate. Right before I joined you today, I looked at a representation agreement that was provided by an agency to a 5-star high school athlete, not even committed to a college yet. And
Yeah,
so if you're already considering hiring an agent when you're in high school, then obviously you're already considering your commercial activity and your value. And that gets to your point. I mean, what's to prevent a player then from deciding to transfer schools within the state or outside of the state, even before we talk about the transfer portal at the collegiate level?
yeah,
What got you into NIL there?
Well, nothing really got me into it, I'd say. Having practiced in the world of sports entertainment and a lot of intellectual property for a long time, I had litigated rights of publicity cases where third parties misappropriate, use someone's rights of publicity, their name, image, and likeness without consent. I'd done that quite a few times. In fact, just recently, completely outside the world of sports, settled a case pre-suit where a company used my client's image on a PowerPoint deck to try to influence people to invest or become subscribers of the company. So it's an area I felt very comfortable with. I was also writing for a very long time, whether it be on Forbes, where I wrote for 6 years, or Inc. magazine, or Sports Agent blog, which I started almost 20 years ago, and then on social media. So going back to 2019, when California became the first state to propose legislation to stand in the way of the NCAA's blanket prohibition on athletes enjoying their NIL, the representative of my district in Florida became interested in proposing something similar and reached out to me through his legislative aid and asked whether I'd be interested in participating and assisting with the crafting and promotion of similar legislation here. And that really got my feet wet. I think gave me a lot of exposure as well. And as soon as July 1, or right around that time, it made sense for me to kind of expand what I was already doing for professional athletes and agents who cater to professional athletes, and do the same thing for college athletes and ultimately even some high school athletes. Um, I happen to be the lawyer who helped create the first collective, the Gator Collective. Now look how every school has a collective. It's crazy to think about.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. And what do you? I mean, do you? I know you're not an IRS agent or a tax man, but like as you see some of these collectives trying to go nonprofit against, even what the IRS said, we're unlikely to do this. Like you're not going to be able to take your donors and get them a
Yeah.
$30,000 write off for their nice donation. Where do you think that's headed?
Yeah, I'm not an accountant. Full disclosure, I'm not a CPA, but I'm smart enough to rest on people who are experts in specific areas, including the world of accounting. And very recently, I heard a professor opine that the vast majority, if not all, collectives who have decided to be registered as 501c3 really do not pass the test for such a classification. And there was a letter that came out from January where a collective was denied its application to be labeled as a not for profit. And so, this professor said he wouldn't even attach his name to any opinion if asked, to benefit a collective in trying to get such a classification. The IRS has come out before and essentially issued a informal opinion that many collectives are improperly operating as such in space. So I think it's a dangerous area. To the extent I've been asked to provide counsel to certain collectives, I almost always say, look at it as a for profit venture. Don't test this. And if you do want to test it, hire somebody who is very experienced in that space, because that's not me.
Hmm.
How does it work with we heard this story a while back. There was this kid, college kid. He got he was an NIL deal with, like, I think it was Maserati, right? Trent, that one.
The
And
dealer, yeah, was
so
a Maserati dealer.
yeah, so this kid's got this car for like 6 months, and apparently there was a pitch in his driveway. So I'm not sure if it was when he was leaving or when he was coming back, but basically kind of like destroyed the bottom of the car. And then the dealership's like, "You owe us 30,000." So is that something that sits with the agent who kind of cut that deal, or is that like something where, like someone like yourself as an attorney would jump in and look at that ahead of time before that happens?
This is maybe one of the biggest challenges right now. When you're a professional athlete, you've oftentimes already made some money. There's 53-man rosters in the NFL. There's 15 players on an NBA team. There's not that many professional athletes. Each one of them can get reputable representation in the form of an agent and or a lawyer. A lot more difficult when you're talking about 400,000 plus college athletes, and then I don't even know the number of high school athletes out there. So the answer to your question is, it really should be the agent and the attorney who are looking over these documents, negotiating them, making sure that the athlete is fully protected, highlighting anything for the athlete to be knowledgeable about before he or she signs on the dotted line. The reality is, far too many athletes don't have an agent and or a lawyer looking over these deals, negotiating them, or they're hiring people who have no expertise, are just putting themselves out as being NIL agents, and they're going to bear the consequences in certain occasions, such as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 8 million high school athletes, by the way, 8 million in the United
Wow.
States. So
I
you can
mean, not
imagine
all of them are
things,
doing NIL deals, but
right, right, right. But if you thought like 100% or 1% were what, were like what, like 80,000 or something. I mean, it's crazy, right? So
yeah.
Darren, tell us some in the NIL space. Let's talk to a couple different people. Love to have the kind of close here with your tip. Want to be conscious of your time here. And close with a tip, like what would the tip be? And I'd like to have three today, Darren. I'd like to have you a tip for the schools or a brand. Let's say a brand that's looking to get a high school kid or a college kid involved. A tip for a parent of navigating this crazy land, and then the athlete themselves.
And we're talking about high school athletes in general.
No, let's talk about any athlete that's going to be in the NIL, an amateur athlete.
Okay. Well, I mean, from a brand's perspective, I want to make sure that it's a good fit. I don't want to just spend money needlessly. I want to put product. If I'm selling goods, I want to put product in the athlete's hands. Services similarly, get the athlete using the services. Make sure that the athlete actually enjoys it, will use it, and take joy in promoting it. Some of the best deals that we've done are those where the athlete's already using the brand before we even reach out. But that's not a prerequisite. It's just, I guess, preferable. All push comes to shove. So I think that's a key. I guess on the other side of it, it's interesting. Athletes, we want athletes to be properly valued. And so you don't want the deliverables to be so much with the compensation being so little. You want to make sure that there's a medium where you're being fairly compensated for the deliverables that you're going to be providing. But something that the athletes should consider is, what are the non-monetary considerations that can really enhance your brand going forward? So for instance, if I'm doing a deal with Gatorade, I'd like some clauses in there that actually says that Gatorade's going to provide best efforts to put me in like some sort of national campaign. Because yes, while that may be beneficial for Gatorade, they're getting to exploit my rights to a large extent. Well, maybe I'm well known in Kansas, but I'm not well known in New York. And now through a national campaign, I can expand my reach, and now there's going to be brands that didn't even know who I was who may be interested. So think long term, think chess moves. Um, I guess the last part was for the parent, correct?
Yep.
So I guess from a parent's perspective, um, understand and have an appreciation for what makes a contract valid with a minor. And sometimes contracts are being put in front of minors without even asking for guardian or parental consent, without having any sort of signature on them, without having any mechanism where there's an understanding of whether it'll even be confirmed by a court of law. And there may actually be outs for an athlete in certain occasions based on the other party not jumping through all the hoops that are necessary. It's a pretty complex area where a lawyer probably can help, but I understand that's not necessarily an option in every occasion.
I think one of the key things for me, Darren, is that this is business, and this isn't low level business, because you see your brand, Gatorade, a big client of yours, they're involved. They're in NIL, Dick's Sports, Nike, Ford, Dodge. I mean, the big brands are there. So if people think this is like some little side hobby, this is 400 level business, and you're taking some inexperienced people and really feet to the fire on this thing pretty quick. And is it a danger zone because of it?
No, it's an opportunity. The client, some of the clients that I've worked with the longest in this space, the Cavender twins, Haley and Hannah, um, they've even said it's basically, and I'm abbreviating, but it's better than taking a course in entrepreneurship in school, because this is real life. This is hands on, and nothing in school would have prepared them, educated them, and allowed them to grow as much as actually participating in NIL has over the past few years. So to me, it's not so scary. I mean, yes, there are pitfalls. There are a lot of concerns. There are reasons why you need to have a strong business team surrounding you. But I look at it from another perspective, from the glass half full, which is, wow, this is just it's not only an amazing opportunity to exploit your value from a commercial standpoint, it's a unique opportunity to now grow yourself for the real world, for whatever's after college, whatever's after high school.
There's a consistent theme there, Rob. You hear it all the time, man. Like, this is the education is real world. And I love that the Cavender twins got that. And I agree with them 100%, man. I wish I'd been trial by fire at that age. And I feel like entrepreneurially, I have been a decade ahead of where I am now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's we talk about that a lot. It's just they're working with the brands, and just and not only that, but just the networking, connecting too. I mean, meeting all these people that they're doing these deals. It just opens up the door for them when once they've graduated, and potential job opportunities, all that.
Darren, this has been awesome, man. Just trying to be very cognizant of your time and taking and joining us, man. So thankful. We could get a little Heitner Legal joining us on the NIL for You show. Rob, you want to close us out here?
Yeah, sure. So again, thank you, Darren. We appreciate your time, and people can find you out on where can they find you?
On X or Instagram, just my name at Darren Heitner. Similarly on LinkedIn, Darren Heitner. Every Friday, I publish a newsletter on NIL, so you can subscribe. It's on LinkedIn. It's called Newsletter Image Likeness, and it's probably the best places to find me, unless it's in
Well,
person.
I did subscribe today. I got that. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the next one.
What took you so long?
I don't know. I've been hearing about I mean, I should have had it out there. Here we're doing this show in NIL, and we got Darren Heitner, one of the premier attorneys in this space. So again, thank you so much, and thank you everybody. You can find NIL for You on sportpreneur.com and across all the podcast networks. And look forward to the next show. And Trent, as always, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Love the show. Thank you, Darren. And I am subscribed to the newsletter Image Likeness. So I'm fired up.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care.